I'm about to tell you something most people refuse to hear because it makes them uncomfortable, but discomfort is exactly where clarity begins. Right now, millions of people are convinced they're being responsible, cautious, or even smart, but in reality they're making a mistake that costs them more than they realize. They believe they're protecting themselves, yet they're quietly sabotaging their own future. Here's the truth: following the crowd rarely leads to real success. Most people accept what's common, what's socially approved, and what feels safe, assuming safety equals wisdom. But conventional thinking is often the enemy of real results. It lulls you into a false sense of security while silently eroding your potential. Think about it. You've been told that playing it safe is prudent, that waiting for the perfect moment is intelligent, and that avoiding risk guarantees stability. You've been trained to fear mistakes more than to pursue opportunity. And so, you sit back, satisfied with mediocrity, believing that time will reward patience alone. But time doesn't reward fear, it rewards action informed by rationality and insight. Most people fail not because they lack intelligence or opportunity. They fail because they measure the wrong things. They track what's visible, what feels real, instead of what truly matters. They count numbers on a screen, balance in a bank account, or fleeting attention to achievements, while the real value, their growth, their influence, their ability to leverage time and resources, is slipping away unnoticed. If you're ready to stop being quietly mediocre, you need to see the hidden patterns, understand the psychology behind why most people fail, and learn the frameworks that actually create lasting success. What I'm about to share will challenge your assumptions, make you rethink your priorities, and show you exactly where most people go wrong, and how you can avoid the same mistakes. Let's get straight to the uncomfortable truth. Most people think they're managing their future wisely, yet they're making decisions that guarantee long-term loss. Consider this: millions of people leave their money sitting in a bank account, earning a tiny fraction of interest, while inflation silently erodes its real value. They feel secure because the balance on the statement is stable, perhaps even slightly growing. But that number is a lie. Here's the math, and it's so simple that a teenager could follow it. If inflation runs at 3% annually, which is actually the government's polite figure, and your savings account yields 0.5%, you are losing 2.5% of your purchasing power every single year. Not a possibility. Not a risk. A certainty. Let it sink in. Over 10 years, that money will buy roughly 25% less than it does today. Yet most people don't notice. They see a growing number on a screen and think they're winning. This is the problem with conventional wisdom. People confuse nominal growth with real growth. They focus on what's easy to measure instead of what matters. It's like congratulating yourself for filling a bucket with a small hole at the bottom. You see liquid entering, but you ignore what's draining away. They track numbers they understand while ignoring the invisible, cumulative decay happening every day. And it gets worse. The financial industry, media, and social norms all reinforce this illusion. You're taught that keeping cash is safe, that avoiding volatility is smart, that risk equals danger. But that's backward. Real risk is permanent loss, not temporary fluctuations. A stock portfolio might fall 20% in a bad year. That's volatility. But cash losing 2 to 3% annually is permanent. You cannot recover what inflation silently steals. Let's consider an example. Imagine two people, both with $100,000. Person A leaves it all in a bank earning 0.5% interest. Person B invests intelligently in assets that historically grow faster than inflation. After 30 years, Person A's money is worth barely half in real terms, while Person B's wealth has multiplied several times over. The difference isn't luck. It's not genius. It's understanding reality versus following the crowd. Most people never realize this because the loss is slow, painless, and invisible. The psychological trap is perfect. Humans hate losing what they already have. This instinct, useful for survival in scarce times, becomes a liability in modern finance. By avoiding small, temporary risks, people voluntarily accept a much larger, inevitable loss over time. This is the first lesson you need to understand. Feeling safe is not the same as being safe. Conventional wisdom misleads because it appeals to comfort, not logic. People cling to visible numbers, familiar methods, and socially approved behaviors while the real threat quietly compounds behind the scenes. If you follow the crowd blindly, you will almost certainly be poorer in the long run, even if you feel secure every day in the meantime. Now that you understand the mechanics of the problem, let's examine why it's so hard for people to act differently. The truth is, this isn't a failure of intelligence. Some of the smartest, most educated people consistently make the same financial mistakes. The culprit isn't knowledge, it's human psychology. Humans have evolved to avoid loss at almost any cost. Psychologists call this loss aversion, and it's powerful. We feel the pain of losing $100 far more intensely than the pleasure of gaining $100. That instinct kept our ancestors alive when resources were scarce, but in today's financial world, it quietly sabotages us. By obsessively avoiding small, temporary risks, we open ourselves up to slow, invisible destruction, like leaving a tiny leak in your roof that eventually ruins the entire house. There's another bias at play: social proof tendency. We are wired to follow the herd because it's easier than thinking critically. If your parents, colleagues, and friends keep their life savings in cash or low-yield investments, you assume it's wise. The problem is, what's socially normal is rarely optimal. Social proof can make catastrophic mistakes seem responsible simply because everyone is doing it. Then there's availability bias. Humans overestimate the probability of dramatic, vivid events because they stick in memory. Market crashes are terrifying, headline-grabbing, and instantly memorable. Meanwhile, slow erosion from inflation is boring, invisible, and abstract. People fear volatility, which is temporary, while ignoring guaranteed losses that silently accumulate year after year. Finally, there's a bias I call deprival super-reaction tendency. It's our instinctive terror of losing what we already have. Cash feels safe because it's tangible. Stocks feel risky because their value fluctuates. So we cling to cash, avoiding short-term discomfort while accepting a much larger, inevitable loss over time. It's like preferring to limp slowly toward a cliff rather than risk a short sprint across solid ground. These biases work together to make perfectly rational strategies seem foolish and reckless. They make people stick with failing approaches while smarter, more patient, and counterintuitive methods go ignored. You don't need to be uneducated or naive to fall into these traps. You just need to be human. The key to overcoming this isn't eliminating these tendencies. They're hardwired. You will always feel them. The solution is awareness. Recognize them, name them, and build systems that protect you from acting on impulse. When you understand the psychology behind your decisions, suddenly the patterns that trapped millions before you become visible. You start seeing the difference between comfort and security, between appearance and reality. And that insight alone can prevent a lifetime of slow, silent losses. Now that we've exposed the problem and why your mind sabotages you, it's time to talk about solutions. The mental models and principles that separate predictable success from quiet failure. These aren't tricks, secrets, or hacks. They're timeless frameworks that guide rational, consistent decision-making. 1. Inversion. Think backwards. Einstein allegedly called it the most powerful problem-solving tool in physics, and it applies perfectly to finance and decision-making. Instead of asking, "How can I succeed?" ask, "How can I fail?" If you invert the question, the answers become blindingly obvious. Holding large amounts of cash for decades in an inflationary environment? That's choosing guaranteed loss. Waiting for the perfect market timing? That's a recipe for missed opportunity. When you identify the ways you're certain to fail, avoiding them becomes simple. 2. Focus on real value, not nominal numbers. Most people celebrate the growth of numbers they can see, a bank balance rising from $50,000 to $55,000, and ignore the erosion of real purchasing power. This is where the principle of measuring what matters comes in. Always compare your assets against real-world value. What can they actually buy or produce? A stock, a business, a skill, or income-generating property grows real value. Cash in isolation does not. 3. Compound interest works both ways. You've heard it called the eighth wonder of the world, but it's crucial to understand that compounding can destroy wealth as easily as it creates it. Inflation compounds slowly, invisibly eating away purchasing power. At 3% annual inflation, a $100,000 cash balance will lose more than half its real value in 30 years. Conversely, investments that grow above inflation leverage compounding to multiply your wealth exponentially. Understanding and respecting this principle is the difference between stagnation and growth. 4. Circle of competence. Know your limits. Warren Buffett famously preaches this principle. You must know what you genuinely understand and avoid what you don't. A great investment for one person can be disastrous for another if it falls outside their knowledge. Stocks, real estate, or businesses are not inherently safe. Your safety comes from understanding what you own, why it generates value, and how it behaves under stress. This protects you from panic selling, overconfidence, and speculation disguised as investment. 5. Productive assets over passive hopes. All assets are not created equal. Productive assets generate real, tangible value. Businesses that sell goods or services, rental properties that produce cash flow, skills that increase earning potential. Speculative assets, gold, collectibles, trendy cryptocurrencies, only hold value if someone else agrees they do. The principle is simple. Invest in things that do something real. If your assets stopped appreciating tomorrow, would you still benefit from its core function? If not, it's speculation, not investment. 6. Optionality and flexibility. Rational decision-making requires preserving options. Bonds, cash equivalents, or short-term liquidity aren't there to make you rich. They exist to give you the freedom to act when real opportunities arise. This principle ensures you're never trapped and can seize high-value prospects while avoiding unnecessary risk. 7. Second-order thinking. Every action has consequences beyond the obvious. Most people stop at first-order thinking. Cash is safe, so I'll keep it. The second-order perspective asks, if I keep cash, what happens to my wealth over 10, 20, or 30 years? What opportunities am I missing? How does this affect my real purchasing power? Thinking 2 steps ahead transforms ordinary decisions into strategic ones. Each of these principles works in isolation, but together they form a framework for rational decision-making. Inversion shows you what to avoid. Real value and compound interest reveal hidden truths. Circle of competence ensures safety through understanding. Productive assets maximize output. Optionality preserves opportunity. Second-order thinking prevents hidden losses. Applied consistently, these mental models turn confusing, high-stakes decisions into structured, predictable outcomes. They allow you to act confidently even when others are panicking. They make the invisible visible and the complex simple. They don't eliminate risk entirely, but they ensure the risks you take are calculated, intentional, and in pursuit of growth, not blind fear. Now that you understand the principles, it's time to translate them into action. Knowledge alone is useless without application. The mental models we discussed, inversion, compound interest, circle of competence, productive assets, optionality, and second-order thinking, must guide your choices every day. Here's how. Step 1. Assess your current situation. Start with a cold, honest look at your financial reality. How much of your wealth is sitting idle in cash or low-yield accounts? Compare it to your real-world needs. Let's say you have $200,000 in a savings account earning 0.5%, while inflation averages 3% per year. Over 10 years, that cash will lose roughly 25% of its purchasing power. This isn't theory, it's arithmetic. Many people feel safe watching that balance, yet their money quietly erodes. Awareness is the first step toward action. Step 2. Identify your circle of competence. What do you truly understand? Can you evaluate businesses, read financial statements, or analyze rental properties? If not, start with what you can grasp. Perhaps that's low-cost index funds or investing in your own skills. Avoid the temptation to chase trends or follow the crowd. Those outside your circle are the riskiest investments. Warren Buffett didn't become one of the wealthiest people in the world by speculating. He stayed within his expertise, consistently applying rational analysis. Step 3. Allocate to productive assets. Now apply the principle of productive assets. Let's take 3 examples. Businesses/stocks. Imagine you buy a stake in a company like Coca-Cola. When costs rise due to inflation, Coca-Cola raises prices and its earnings grow. Unlike cash, your ownership appreciates with real value. Historically, a diversified portfolio of productive businesses returns 10% annually, which beats inflation by a comfortable margin. Real estate. Purchase rental property generating monthly income. Rents tend to rise with inflation, and if you hold a fixed mortgage, you're repaying with cheaper dollars over time. Even if property values stagnate, the cash flow continues. Ask yourself, if this property stopped appreciating tomorrow, would I still benefit from the rental income? If yes, you have a productive asset. If not, you're speculating. Your own skills. Investing in yourself is often overlooked. Professional training, certifications, or learning high-value skills can multiply your earning potential. A $10,000 investment in education early in your career can yield far greater returns over decades than the same amount sitting in a bank account. Unlike stocks or property, your skills cannot be stolen or destroyed by market crashes. Step 4. Use optionality to preserve flexibility. Never commit 100% of your resources without liquidity. Keep an emergency fund, 3 to 6 months of expenses, in cash or near cash equivalents. This protects you from short-term shocks while giving you the freedom to act on opportunities. Temporary liquidity may feel unproductive, but its value comes from optionality, not nominal returns. Step 5. Apply inversion to major decisions. Ask yourself, what are the ways I could fail here? If you're considering a speculative investment, What is the worst-case outcome? Can you tolerate it? If the answer is no, it's not a rational choice. Avoiding predictable failure often creates more wealth than chasing potential gains. Step 6. Consider second-order consequences. Every financial decision has hidden ripple effects. Holding excessive cash seems safe in the moment, but the second-order effects, lost growth, diminished retirement options, reduced lifestyle flexibility, are devastating over decades. Always ask, if I do this today, what will my financial reality look like 10, 20, or 30 years from now? Step 7. Rebalance and stick to the plan. Once your allocations align with your circle of competence and productive assets, resist emotional reactions. Market volatility is temporary. Inflation is relentless. Rebalance periodically, but avoid checking your balances daily or making impulsive moves. Consistency and patience compound results far more than excitement or frantic activity. Step 8. Track real results, not nominal numbers. Measure progress in terms of purchasing power and tangible value, not just account balances. If your wealth grows numerically but loses purchasing power, you're not winning. By focusing on real outcomes, you see clearly which decisions actually improve your financial position. Example scenario: imagine two people. Person A keeps $100,000 in cash earning 0.5%, Person B invests $50,000 in a diversified stock portfolio, 10% historical return, and $50,000 in rental property generating 5% net cash flow. After 30 years, adjusting for 3% inflation, Person A has roughly $48,000 in real terms. Person B's portfolio, on the other hand, grows to hundreds of thousands in purchasing power. The difference isn't luck, it's rational, consistent application of principles over time. Step 9. Continually invest in awareness. Finally, never stop learning. Observe biases, evaluate results, and refine your processes. Understanding human psychology and systemic risk is as important as understanding math. Avoiding mistakes consistently will compound your advantage faster than any speculative bet. Even when people understand the principles, they still stumble. The mistakes are predictable, consistent, and surprisingly easy to avoid, if you approach them with rational thought instead of emotion. Let's go through the most common pitfalls. 1. Confusing comfort with safety. Many people equate feeling safe with actually being safe. Cash in a bank feels secure because it's tangible and visible. Stocks, on the other hand, fluctuate daily and trigger anxiety. But as we've seen, cash erodes quietly over time. Feeling comfortable while your wealth decays is not safety, it's an illusion. To avoid this trap, always measure results in real terms, not in how secure something feels. Ask yourself, is this asset genuinely preserving or growing my purchasing power? 2. Following the crowd. Social proof is powerful. If everyone around you keeps money in low-interest accounts or chases speculative trends, it's tempting to do the same. But what's popular is rarely optimal. Blindly following the herd can lead to catastrophic losses, as countless historical bubbles have shown. The antidote is disciplined thinking. Stay within your circle of competence and make decisions based on rational analysis, not peer pressure. 3. Overreacting to short-term volatility. Volatility triggers fear, and fear drives impulsive decisions. People sell at the bottom of market dips or avoid investments entirely because temporary drops feel dangerous. Yet long-term trends often recover and compound. Avoid this mistake by establishing a plan, sticking to it, and understanding that temporary fluctuations are not permanent losses. Treat markets like a marathon, not a sprint. 4. Ignoring second-order consequences. It's easy to consider only the immediate effects of a choice. Cash feels safe now, so people park decades of wealth there. They fail to consider long-term consequences: lost growth, reduced retirement options, or missed opportunities. Second-order thinking prevents these hidden losses. Always ask, if I take this action today, what will it mean for my wealth and options 10 or 20 years from now? 5. Neglecting personal development. Many people focus exclusively on financial instruments while ignoring the most powerful asset they possess: themselves. Skills, knowledge, and earning potential compound over time, often outpacing any investment. Failing to invest in yourself is a slow, invisible drain on future opportunities. Avoid this by dedicating time and resources to learning high-value skills and expanding your capabilities consistently. 6. Falling for complexity and secrets. Financial industries, media, and self-proclaimed experts often sell complexity as wisdom. People believe they need exotic strategies or secret techniques to succeed. The truth is simple. Rationality, discipline, and consistency outperform cleverness most of the time. Avoid the trap by focusing on core principles. Invest in productive assets, stay within your circle of competence, and apply patience. Complexity is rarely your friend. These mistakes all share a common thread. Emotion overrules rational thinking. Fear, comfort, envy, and social pressure lead people to act against their long-term interests. By recognizing these tendencies, naming them, and designing processes to counteract them, you build a system that consistently outperforms impulse and short-term thinking. The difference between predictable failure and steady success isn't luck. It's rationality applied consistently over time. Let's look at some real-world examples that show how these principles play out in practice, and what happens when they're ignored. Consider the story of two investors during the 2008 financial crisis. Investor A had most of their savings in cash and low-yield accounts, convinced that avoiding stock market volatility was the safest approach. Investor B, on the other hand, had invested in productive businesses and real estate within their circle of competence. When the market collapsed, Investor A panicked, fearing immediate loss, and kept all their money idle, watching it slowly lose purchasing power to inflation. Investor B experienced temporary declines in portfolio value but remained disciplined, holding quality assets that continued to generate cash flow and grew stronger as the economy recovered. 10 years later, Investor B's wealth had more than doubled in real terms, while Investor A's purchasing power had barely increased. Now let's go back further to the dot-com bubble of the late 1990s. Many investors poured money into trendy technology stocks, chasing rapid gains and social validation. They ignored basic principles like circle of competence and productive assets, believing they had discovered a secret to wealth. When the bubble burst, fortunes evaporated overnight. Meanwhile, those who focused on businesses they understood, companies with genuine pricing power and steady cash flows, remained relatively unscathed. Their patience and rationality allowed them to buy more assets at depressed prices, compounding wealth over the next decade. Even on a smaller, personal scale, these patterns repeat. A young professional investing in skill development, learning high-value skills, pursuing certifications, or starting a side business, builds a foundation that outpaces any passive savings strategy. Meanwhile, peers who save diligently in low-interest accounts without improving their earning potential slowly fall behind, not because they are lazy or unintelligent, but because they misunderstand real value and risk. These examples illustrate a key lesson. Success isn't about luck or timing. It's about understanding the rules of reality and consistently applying rational frameworks. Those who focus on productive assets, act within their competence, and think long-term outperform those who cling to comfort, follow trends blindly, or ignore second-order consequences. The contrast is clear. Rationality, patience, and disciplined action create lasting advantage. Emotional, short-sighted decisions, no matter how well-intentioned, lead to predictable losses. History and personal experience repeatedly confirm this principle. By now, you understand the principles, the psychology, and the real-world consequences of decisions. The next step is action. Knowledge without execution is wasted. Here are clear steps and questions to guide you toward rational, disciplined decisions. Step 1. Assess your real position. Write down all your assets and liabilities. Then ask yourself, what is the real purchasing power of these assets? Which of them are genuinely productive? Compare what you have to what you need to achieve your long-term goals. This isn't about comfort, it's about reality. Step 2. Define your circle of competence. List areas where you truly understand value and risk. Be brutally honest. Stocks, real estate, or professional skills. Focus your resources on what you can reliably analyze and manage. Anything outside your competence is speculation. Ask, do I genuinely understand this asset, or am I following advice because it feels popular? Step 3. Allocate wisely to productive assets. Decide what portion of your resources goes to cash for emergencies, productive investments, and personal development. Keep 3 to 6 months of expenses liquid. Beyond that, prioritize assets that grow real value, businesses, income-generating properties, and your own skills. Write down exact percentages for clarity. Step 4. Evaluate risks using inversion and second-order thinking. Ask, if I take this action, what are the ways I could fail? What are the long-term consequences? Write down your answers. This forces clarity and prevents decisions based solely on fear, comfort, or hype. Step 5. Commit to consistent action and rebalancing. Set rules for when and how you will rebalance your portfolio or skills. Avoid daily market checks or reacting to headlines. Discipline compounds over decades. Impulsivity erodes wealth slowly but surely. Step 6. Track results in real terms. Measure outcomes by purchasing power and tangible growth, not just nominal balances. Ask yourself monthly, am I improving real value or just feeling busy? Adjust only when disciplined analysis indicates it's necessary. Step 7. Continuous reflection and learning. Every quarter, review mistakes, wins, and biases. Name the emotions that influence decisions. Ask, which of my actions were rational and which were emotional? How can I reinforce good habits and guard against predictable errors? These exercises aren't theoretical. They create clarity, expose blind spots, and guide deliberate action. By committing to rational evaluation, long-term thinking, and consistent application of mental models, you systematically avoid predictable losses. Writing your reflections, answering these questions honestly, and acting on the insights transforms knowledge into lasting advantage. Let's recap the key truths you must carry forward. Most people feel safe while their wealth quietly erodes. Cash is comfortable, but it is not secure. Conventional wisdom, social proof, and short-term thinking all conspire to keep you trapped in predictable loss. The antidote is simple, but it requires discipline. Understand your circle of competence, invest in productive assets, apply mental models like inversion and second-order thinking, and guard against predictable psychological biases. Measure your progress in real purchasing power, not nominal numbers. Invest in yourself, preserve optionality, and commit to rational long-term action. History, personal experience, and mathematics all converge on the same lesson. Those who act rationally, patiently, and consistently outperform the crowd. It's not brilliance or luck that creates lasting wealth. It's avoiding predictable mistakes and making disciplined decisions repeatedly over decades. Now is the moment to act. Don't wait for a perfect opportunity. Don't let fear of temporary volatility paralyze you. Write down your circle of competence, evaluate your assets, and ask the hard questions. Am I maximizing real value? Where am I choosing comfort over growth? The future will not reward hesitation. Time and rationality compound into advantage, while inaction compounds into loss. You can take control today. Apply the principles, think long-term, and act deliberately. Your wealth, freedom, and future self depend on it. Remember, the choice is yours. You can cling to comfort and watch your purchasing power vanish, or you can act rationally, decisively, and patiently, and build a life of real security and opportunity. The mathematics are clear, the principles are proven, and the path is available to anyone willing to think clearly. Act now. The difference between mediocrity and financial freedom begins with one disciplined decision.